Hello and welcome to Pest in Class, expert voices in pest management. Today we talk with Josh Brill, business development lead at Wisetack. We discuss the intricacies of customer financing, its advantages within the pest control industry, and best practices for offering financial options. I'm your host, Amanda Salvatore. Let's get into it. Josh Brill, you are the business development lead at Wisetack, and today we are talking about consumer financing and its benefits for the pest industry. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Well, I am excited to get into it. I do not know much, if anything, about financing, let alone consumer financing. So I'm excited to learn the nuances, the differences, and how it can benefit the pest industry.
Yeah, that is why I'm here.
Absolutely. But first and foremost, we need to get to know you, Josh, obviously. So I'm going to ask you a pretty difficult question, in
Mhm.
my opinion, one of the most difficult on the podcast thus far. If you were stranded on a desert island, what three items would you bring?
That is a tough one. I will start out a little bit cheating, but I'll take my dog. She's got a lot of personality. I think she would be a great way to kill a lot of long days. I would take a as large of a supply of Diet Coke as I can bring with me. That's definitely a staple of my diet. I think I'd miss that more than anything on the food and drink front. So that feels like an easy one to me. And I would take I've got this fleece that I really like. Islands get cold at night, so I think that's my big three.
You know what? All of these are the correct. I'm actually going with you wherever this
All
island
right.
is. Your dog sounds great. Diet Coke also excellent, and a fleece. It probably will get cold at some
Yeah,
point.
gotta be
Absolutely.
practical, even in desert island scenarios.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it gets a little chilly. You know what I mean? You don't want to be chilly. I think a lot of people would agree with you, honestly, on that one. All right, so let's dive right in. What is Wisetack's mission?
Yeah. So Wisetack's goal is really at the end of the day, more than anything, we want to be a sales tool for contractors. So I'm sure we'll get into some of the details of what our pay over time program looks like later on. But really, like we want to be an extra way for pest control company owners, inspectors, salespeople, like however your company is structured. We want to make it easier for you to close more jobs, close larger jobs, and ultimately just make it easier for your customers to say yes. That's really where we sit. So there's, all kinds of, fancy things I can tell you about the product, but sort of elevator pitch is we want to help you sell, we want to help your customers pay in a responsible way.
I love that. In a responsible way, I think is really the key here. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that's, again, we can get into all of this, but it's very much reflected in our company's mission and our financial products kind of all the way through. We always want to make sure we're working both with you and with your customers in a way that's a win-win-win for everyone.
Absolutely. Now, for some of our listeners, financing might also be a newer concept for them as well. So, what is consumer financing? How does that differ?
Yeah, so financing through Wisetack works a little bit differently than some of your listeners might expect. What I'll say, I'll start out with a sort of inaccurate description and then sort of go from there. I think that the easiest way to understand what we do at Wisetack is sort of a buy now, pay later style product. So if anybody's familiar with like Affirm or Klarna or Afterpay, like when you're making e-commerce transactions, a really similar experience to that, just geared towards these larger offline transactions. In the case of Wisetack, we really double down on the home services space. And then within that, pest control specifically is an area that we're spending a lot of time and working with a lot of different companies. So it's really built, again, like to be a simple tool for your businesses to be able to offer. And again, provide those flexible payment options for your customers when you're talking about those larger jobs. The places Wisetack really focuses are what we call termites and up. So termites, insulation, and exclusion jobs, that's really where we see a lot of the financing. And again, Wisetack is a tool that's there to give your customers another way to pay for those bigger ticket sizes when they either might not have the cash on hand, they just don't want to, shell out a few $1,000s unexpectedly, which I think is not going to be a surprise to many of the business owners listening. Just make it, have that sort of other option for those customers at that stage in the process.
Yeah, so I know you said insulation, you cover a
Mhm.
couple of bases. How does financing help pest control businesses specifically? Because I think it's a different phone call you get as a pest control owner than, say, for instance, doing construction.
Mhm. For sure. So I think that it differs a little bit job by job, but let's just talk about, termites and exclusion jobs. That's often going to be an emotional sales process where, when you're talking about an exclusion job, more often than not, what you're going to be hearing from your customer is get this, whatever it is, out of my house now. I need this gone. I'm not looking at 5 or 6 bids. I need this gone right now. Get over here, get this done. So you want to be able to close those sales as quickly as possible. Again, though, those ticket sizes can climb really, really high. Those are, solidly north of $1,000, and they can get, significantly larger than that. So on the one hand, you've got these customers who want to get the jobs done right away. On the other, like it's not always easy or possible to pay those ticket sizes right then and there. So on the one hand, Wisetack is a tool to just say like, hey, we are in consumer financing generally, I should say. We're here to work with you. The ticket size is going to be, let's say $4,000. That said, you can pay as low as $100 a month. We've got a little calculator that you can show them. Really, just kind of avoid that sticker shock a little bit. When you're coming in with those larger ticket sizes and the customer wants to work with you, you want to work with them. This is a way to kind of present the ticket in another way than you've been able to previously.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. So explain to me a little. Can we dive into the differences there? Because I'm
For
not
sure.
familiar with it. So, um, when we're talking about ticket size, how are you presenting it? How is it different with you guys?
Yeah, so Wisetack is really focused again on those like larger one-off services. I spend a lot of my life talking to pest control company owners and inspectors and salespeople and office people. The thing that like I always like to get ahead of is we are not here to take over your recurring services business. So a big chunk of these businesses is always going to be, once a month, once every 2 months, or more often than that, sprayings where you're coming back and just like doing that service over and over again. In those scenarios, like the contractor wants a credit card on file, the ticket sizes are fairly small, so there's not going to be much of a need to finance it generally. Where we come in is those bigger one-off tickets. So I said termites, exclusion, and insulation. That's sort of the big three for us. It can vary business by business and even region by region. But when you're coming in and again, either upselling or just talking to them exclusively about those larger ticket sizes, that's where financing can be really valuable. And it's something that's been common in a lot of different industries where the ticket sizes do tend to be larger. So HVAC, plumbing, roofing, financing has been a big part of the workflow there for a while. It's a little bit newer to pest control. And that's where we're helping is making those big ticket sizes seem less scary to the consumer and being able to provide them again attractive, fair offers for, again, call it 1,000, 2,000 up. We do go as low as $500, but again, that's really where we're sitting on the scale in pest.
Josh, I'm really interested in this idea that consumer financing is newer to the pest industry. Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold. And I think part of it is just like so much of pest control, historically and presently, is about those recurring services that, again, just like aren't really fits for financing. So I think that like both the financing companies as well as the pest control companies just like maybe overlooked how good a fit this sort of workflow was for the industry. Again, just because you've got this whole chunk of it that's always going to be, off limits, not a fit, whatever you want to call it. And I think the other one is in pest control for the larger jobs. Unlike a new roof or a new water heater or something like that, it's not like you're financing a specific physical item. Like you'd be doing it for a service rather than again roof, water heater, electrical switchboard, whatever it is. So I think that like getting over that hump a little bit. And again, those ticket sizes have climbed very, very large, especially in those in those fields that I mentioned earlier. So I think that's a big part of it also. Some of the very largest companies have always leaned on financing really heavily. But I think that for everybody else, it's been a little bit newer and a little bit of a learning experience. But from my standpoint, like I can say this was not a field that I was super focused on a year and a half ago. And I've been with Wisetack for a little over 3 years. So I've been doing this for a while. What we found was, frankly, we just had some companies come to us and it was a great, great fit. And it was the sort of thing, that you always hope happens in business where something just kind of happens organically. And immediately it was like, okay, like we are a good fit in this industry. We should be making our presence felt here a little bit more. So yeah, it's just been a super rewarding journey, and especially like being able to help these companies grow and their customers have more options at the end of the day.
That's great. That's great. I think some of our listeners are hearing that and are wondering, if I have customers who are already using credit cards to
Mhm.
pay for services, why is financing a better option for them?
Yeah, and the first thing I'll say is credit cards can be a great way to pay for things, depending on who you are, depending on what sort of program you're using. On the whole, though, what we hear pretty often from customers, and there is some data that backs this up, is that credit cards are a great way to pay for small purchases that you're planning on paying back in a short amount of time. There are a few reasons why that is. The first thing I'll say is credit card interest tends to be higher than it would be than the interest that you'd see with a program like Wisetack. You'd also see potentially rates that are moving around, whereas ours are fixed and built for a longer payback period. But really, credit card limits can also be fairly low. So if we're talking about, again, let's say an installation job that goes $8,000 or $10,000, a lot of people just aren't going to have that $10,000 limit on their credit card. Wisetack loans go up to $25,000. That's our maximum right now. So there is a little bit more flexibility for these consumers, especially when we're talking again about the larger end of jobs.
It sounds to me that being able to offer these finance opportunities as a business owner, you're going to be hearing yes a lot more
Mhm.
often.
Yes, that is, you took the words out of my mouth. I will also do a little bit of a plug for my company and the things that people are saying about us. But we also have a super high NPS score. So we've got a score of 79, which means that the vast majority of our customers are giving us a 9 or a 10 on the user surveys. So, I think that speaks to 79 is high anywhere, but I think it speaks really strongly to what we're doing, that our end customers in an industry like financial services are giving us those sort of scores. We do a lot, both in terms of the loans that we're offering and the tenors of the loan beyond APRs, into making sure like we've got a great respectful relationship with these borrowers. And that is, it's great for a lot of reasons. But something else I'll call out is for an industry like pest control, where we know a ton of these businesses are going to come down to referrals and repeat business and things like that. So a product like financing can certainly be viewed as a little bit of an extension of the business. Like we know that anybody using a product like Wisetack is really going to trust us to take that relationship with the homeowner in our hands. So being able to have again that really positive relationship on the whole with our customers and our customers as customers in this case is a big deal. And again, like the sort of exactly built very much with this scenario in mind, where we want to make sure we've got these long-term relationships with our end users.
Amazing. So, as a business owner, I have taken on finance as something
Mhm.
I am going to offer. So, how does that process work? What is the onboarding process for that and incorporating it into your business?
Yeah, so it's super smooth. It's a pretty quick application. I think it takes like 5 or 10 minutes on average, but almost exclusively like information that people should have off the top of their heads. And then what we do at Wisetack is like we will train you as much as you allow us to. There is really no limit to what we'll do. I think on this call, I've gotten like 4 or 5 texts from a pest company who I spoke to this morning, gave them my phone number so they can text me about specific jobs. And that's the sort of thing that we really do try and make a big part of our process here. Although I'm not promising that everybody at Wisetack will be giving out their cell phone numbers, but it's certainly something we do with our customers. But yeah, like we know that nobody in the pest industry is waking up in the morning dreaming of, learning a new financial services product, becoming a salesperson for a whole different tool. We on the product end, I'm on the training end. Our goal is to make this as easy and as painless a process as possible and really let people see the value in adding financing to their sales conversations up front.
To piggyback off of this idea of onboarding within the team, who is going to be primarily dealing with this transition?
Yeah, so I'm gonna start with a cop out and say that it can vary tremendously business by business. We have, everybody from smaller, mom and pop type operations to some of the very largest pest companies in the country working with us. So as you'd expect, there's some variance there with who's going to onboard with WiseTech. I would say like at a macro level, the important thing that we're always trying to do is we want a relationship both with the office team and with the sales team. So whether that's the same person, whether it's an owner operator type, whether it's a huge national sales team, that doesn't really matter. But what we want to do is again like train the office staff to understand like how this works, what if anything needs to be done on that end, and how to really think about this holistically, like from a management standpoint. And then on the front end, we want to, again, like work with these sales teams. I know everybody's got a different name for them: inspectors, sales partners, sales reps, whatever you're calling them. We want to work with them and sort of like build ourselves into your existing playbook. So the big thing with WiseTech is like we don't want you to reinvent the wheel again. Like you're not going to have to turn your reps into financial product salespeople. It's a really simple process, both for them and for the consumer, for the homeowner on purpose. So like we just want to talk to them, hear what's going well, and think about like a couple of different places that WiseTech can be embedded into the process, and then just go from there and let it rip. And we've seen a lot of success doing things that way.
How long does the onboarding process take?
Yeah, it can be like, we've had national companies get fully up and running within a week. So
Oh,
it can be
wow.
really, really quick. I'll say it, I know people running these businesses are busy. So really, the only thing that can make this process take longer is if it's, we've got to wait around a little bit for you guys to make time for a meeting with us. But yeah, it's a really, really quick process. And certainly not the type of thing that's going to require, tons and tons of meeting time or anything like that.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I could never own a business. It sounds like such a labor of love and very time consuming. So something that can just be integrated into your process and not take up too much time, I think is amazing.
Yeah, we are huge fans of not having meetings at Wisetack, so we try and pass that along to our pest partners.
I am also not into meetings, so we have that in common. I don't know if there's anybody who really is into a meeting, but some people, there's somebody out there right now listening to the podcast being like, I don't mind them. They're pretty
Yeah,
good.
well, good
They're
for
okay.
them.
Right? Right? We
E-
should all aspire to be just like them. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. So w- when talking about finance, we have onboarded, we now are offering these finance options. I know earlier you had said that within pest control, these calls can be a little emotional.
Mhm.
People are dealing with an issue that needs to be solved today. A lot of
Yes.
times that might not even be possible because of the nature of the actual job itself and talking with entomologists and people who know the life cycle of bugs, it can be a very long, tedious process. So you're dealing with an owner or someone within the business who might need help right away.
Mhm.
How do we talk with those customers?
Yeah. And again, I hate to keep saying it, but it does depend. But yes, I mean, I think the most important thing really with any sort of job where you're thinking about financing through Wisetack or any other player in the space is what you want to lead with financing. That's when it becomes valuable to you as a sales tool and as something that's going to help your consumers make their decision rather than just sort of waiting around. If they ask at the end of the process, hey, by the way, do you have financing? Like, yes, it can make the checkout process a little bit easier, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you lose a lot of the value there. So that would be my advice. Like when you're talking to these customers, whether it's an emotional exclusion sale, or it's an installation job that maybe you're upselling, or long-term customer versus new customer, just bring it up early. I can get ahead of the questions that I'm sure people are thinking right now. Nobody's going to get offended. These are, everybody understands that financing, it's when you shop on Amazon, you can't check out without seeing a financing option. And I think that pest control should be no different. So that's sort of my one piece of advice. Like when thinking about how to talk about financing with your customers, just bring it up early. Say, hey, by the way, we offer it for anybody looking for specific tips. I'm happy to jump on with you and send those over and learn a little bit more about your business. But yeah, it's really it's the nature of it is just like if you offer it early, it's going to be helpful to you more often than not.
Absolutely. Being transparent and honest and
Mhm.
understanding that it is a transaction is okay, I
Yes.
feel. There is a delicate balance and a dance that seems to happen, but also it is understood by all parties, I have to pay for this service.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you're going to be presenting that estimate at some point.
Yeah.
So it's at that point, at least, it's going to be clear that it's a transaction.
Do you have any other best practices for when talking to customers about financing?
Yeah. So we have a calculator where you can show them like what they could pay as low as based on a specific ticket price. It's not going to make sense in every scenario. Like some of these sales are just going to be so quick that you just want to send them an application right out of the gate. We also have a pre-qualification tool, which is a really, really cool feature that will allow you, even before you know like what the ticket size is going to look like, either like on that initial call or maybe right when you first get to that kitchen table, you can send that out and then both you and the customer can see what they'd be qualified for maximum should they want to go down the path of financing. And that's a really powerful tool for both of you to have, again, early in the cycle. It can really help shape like where the conversation goes, what sorts of ticket sizes you end up talking about, and potentially open the door for some upselling if you know that, hey, I see that there's, an issue in the crawl space. I can be back here in 6 months. Or we can just knock this out now. And by the way, you've got $10,000 available to spend in financing. That is something that I don't think anybody could argue is not going to be useful for a salesperson doing that inspection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's nice to know that you have options,
Yes.
especially when
Everybody
you're
likes options.
what was that?
Everybody likes options.
Yes, I know I do. So, when offering finance, you're dealing with bigger ticket items and with possibly bigger jobs, obviously. If you're a business owner looking to sell your business, how does offering financing make you more attractive to potential buyers?
Yeah, and that's a great question and something that we've actually heard about from some companies we work with. I think that again, I hope this has come through, but like we are here to help you close more of those large jobs, and I don't think it's a secret for companies that are looking to sell or potentially talking about an acquisition at some stage. That's a big part of what makes you attractive to a potential buyer. So being able to come in and say, hey, we're doing X percentage of, one-off projects north of $3,000. And by the way, like we've recently started offering financing, we're actively leaning into it. We're able to show this growth in that segment. That's going to be a big deal for again, those potentially acquiring businesses. Those guys are, they're really into the numbers. And I think like being able to show a little bit of growth there from financing, and B, that you're doing everything in your power to get your team ready to take the next step in that segment of the market. That is certainly, the sort of thing that's going to make you attractive relative to, some of the many other options on the market, and that will make everybody happier at the end of that transaction.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is if you're interested in leveling up with your business, providing options for customers is the way to go. You want to be able to take on bigger jobs and to create those relationships, which inevitably is only going to make you more attractive on the market.
Yeah, yeah, that's really well put. There's a business we work with who actually started doing insulation and encapsulation jobs, so like the very biggest jobs in these market, because they'd had so much success with financing. So like it was working for them with the smaller ticket sizes, and they kind of said, we've got the training for this, we just never really prioritized selling it. But now that we've got these financing options, we feel confident that like we can go out and get more of these jobs. So they've added a whole segment to their market on the basis of their success offering consumer financing and moving, kind of creeping up market a little bit. So again, super, super gratifying to see, and really like what this program does when it's working really well is exactly that.
Amazing. Do you
Yeah.
have any other success stories that you can kind of dive into that other businesses or owners, if they're listening, can be like, oh, that's me. And oh, it is something I should consider.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that like I can't say any names, but again, we do
Oh,
work with
come on, Josh. Just dish already. Come on.
I would if I could. I'm under NDAs, just like everybody. So we do have some, kind of household names in the pest industry working with us, and those are really exciting relationships. I think though that like my favorite company that we've started working with was a little bit smaller than that, a big, solid regional company. They'd offered financing in the past. It hadn't been a huge success, but they really wanted to. So like there was a lot of buy-in from the company, even though I don't want to say they'd been burned before, but it's just like the program had never really taken off after they'd invested some real resources in getting it off the ground. We started working with them, met with their sales teams, met with again their back office team, ownership, everybody. So like a really intensive, maybe like 3 or 4 days of like training and onboarding. And within a week, we were told that like they were seeing success, both financing and again with sales on the larger end, which are related, that they'd never ever seen in the 10 years of trying to use a legacy financing player to work for their business. So like that is exactly, that was the perfect thing to hear. That was like, okay, like we're cooking with gas here. Like this is a great fit for the pest control market. And that was last busy season. So like we've gotten a ton of other ones, other companies who've had similar experiences since then. But yeah, they were the first company that I worked with who really just like took off in a hurry, after they tried in the past and it hadn't worked. So that was great. And then the other one that I'll share is like we have a fairly small company. So really like a family run business, in a smaller market, who again, like they'd kind of dipped their toes into financing in the past, but it was just too complicated. And, their people had to go out and memorize lots of different plans and rate sheets. And, when you start getting into that, people are getting confused. People get, it's just not going to happen. So again, the conversation was just like, let's go in, let's give this a try. If you hate it, there's no monthly minimums with Wisetack. There's no startup cost or anything like that. If you hate it, you'll never hear from us again. And it's just not going to, it'll be a 1 hour meeting that you wasted. We met with them for an hour, and all of a sudden, like we just started seeing applications, applications, applications. And it was the same thing. Like they just like something clicked for them. And it was pretty quickly, like after we started working with them, something clicked. And again, because they were a smaller business, without, a massive outside sales team or anything like that, it was just really important to get everybody on board. And that's what we did. I think I mentioned that I, sometimes give out my phone number. That was certainly a case where I was on the phone with them. They'd go into a house, they'd have a question for me, right then and there, and we were able to take care of them. So cases like that, where it's like the mid-sized businesses, the small ones, in addition to the really large ones, it's just always just like so great to see, this program like working and helping these businesses grow, especially when they've tried and maybe not had the most success with financing in the past. So yeah, those are kind of my two off the bat favorites.
I've got to ask, what do you think is the difference? Especially if they've tried financing
Mhm.
in the past. I know, and going with you guys, yes, that that is the shift, right? But what do you think is that that light bulb moment that really takes it to the next level?
Yep. It is the first time the first salesperson closes a job that they wouldn't have gotten without financing. That is when things take off. So, like, it is pretty binary, but the first time that happens, you almost always see a huge explosion of activity because it's pretty clearly working, and the feedback from customers is also really, really solid. We've got this like word cloud of the feedback that we get, and the word easy is just like massive on there. I actually don't remember a lot of the other words because easy is so big. Easy, simple. So like that's a big part of it. Like when your customers say, oh, like that was actually like a super quick process. It's super simple. I understood it all the way through and I'm done 30 seconds later. Whereas in the past, maybe they had to fill out, physical paperwork. They had to upload all sorts of documents. Not the case with Wisetack. So like I think the combination of like good user feedback, good sales feedback, that will kind of come together and then it's off to the races from there.
When a tool is intuitive and easy to use, you're going to use it the way it's intended.
Correct. I think my product and marketing team would both like that quote very much.
You can have it. You can take it. I won't charge, I promise. Yeah, it sounds to me like if something if something's very easy and you can offer and show it and it just there it is, easy to read, you're all set and it's easier to hear yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I wish everything. I wish every review on everything was that it was easy. That would
Yes. It
it
is a huge focus of ours. So no accident that that's the feedback that we get. We're definitely striving for that, both for the customers and for the business owners and users.
incredible, incredible.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a fantastic product. And it sounds like financing and consumer financing is just something that pest control owners should really look into if they haven't already, or look into another option if it's not working for them.
Mhm.
Because it seems like financing is a positive and it should be a positive for your business. So finding the right fit is really what you need more than
For
anything
sure.
else.
Yeah. It's just an extra tool for you. And I think, I haven't spoken to anybody in this industry who's not looking for an extra little edge up, an extra way to make their customers happy. So this is all of the above. And yeah, obviously I'm not unbiased, but big endorsement for me. And that's very in line with the feedback that I've gotten in the industry.
I'd love to dive into the FieldRoutes and Wisetack partnership that's happening. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
For sure. So we are super excited to start working with FieldRoutes. We're going to be launching the partnership relatively soon. I will have an exact date in short time, but we're going to be launching the partnership, and it's going to really allow FieldRoutes users to start working with Wisetack and start leveraging it, like we've talked about here, into their sales processes. And I think the idea is we're just going to continue making, enhancements to the partnership down the road. Certainly looking for feedback from customers and everything else. But yeah, like they've been such a great team to work with. Obviously, a huge name in the industry. So really excited to team up together and give those FieldRoutes users again, that extra push and that extra option when they're thinking about growing their teams.
That's incredible. A little extra edge.
Yeah,
I
why
love
not?
that. I love that. Josh, before we go,
Mhm.
first I want to say thank you so much for coming
Oh
on.
no, thank you for having me.
I know a lot more about financing in general, which I think is just good for me, but I think our listeners are also going to benefit quite a lot
Excellent.
from our conversation. But before we do go, is there anything that you wish that we talked about today?
I think we covered a lot. What I'll leave you with is like I hope this shine through. But like I am a big fan of financing in the pest control space. It's something that I legitimately like. I love talking about it. I love hearing what other people have to say. Whether they be business owners, consumers, or anybody else in the industry. So like, do not hesitate to reach out. No matter if like you might think you're not the greatest fit for WiseTech, you might not be interested. You might be happy with what you're doing currently. I kind of just want to hear from you and like hear the way that you are thinking about a product like this and how it does or does not fit into what you're doing. So yeah, this is Nobody talks about termite financing more than I do. And if anybody is ever happy to have those conversations with me, I'm always in. So yeah, that's what I'll leave you with.
Josh, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. We appreciate it so much, and thank you again.
Of course.